At some point in your life, someone decided you were the problem. Maybe you were too intense, too emotional, too ambitious, or just too much. And without realizing it, you started to prove them wrong. Not by confronting it, but by adjusting yourself. You softened, you filtered, you made yourself easier to accept. And over time, you didn't just change how you acted. You changed what you allowed yourself to be. And that is where most people get stuck. Welcome to Team Villains, where we stop performing for approval and start living life on our own terms. If you've ever felt like the villain in someone else's story, you're in the right place. I want to make this real, so we're going to start with my own personal story. I was recently in a relationship with a woman named Danielle. She's a good woman. There was no chaos, no toxicity, nothing obviously wrong. And that's what made this harder to see. Because what started happening didn't look like a problem from the outside. But internally, I recognized it immediately. I started choosing the relationship over myself. And not in some dramatic, obvious way, in small decisions. The kind that feel responsible. The kind that nobody would question. I started putting off work I said I was going to do. I started delaying things that were going to move my business forward. I started saying yes to time together, not because I truly wanted it in that moment, but because I felt like I should. And that's the word, right? That's the word, should. That's where a lot of people lose themselves. Because should doesn't come from truth. It comes from expectation. And I have lived this pattern before. Over and over again throughout my adult life. I don't get controlled. No one forces me. I participate in it. I step back from myself to maintain the relationship. And the dangerous part is, it feels like you're doing something right. It feels like maturity. It feels like compromise. But if you're honest, it's really self-abandonment. And I reached a point where I couldn't ignore that anymore. You see, I've reached a stage in my life where I know what I'm capable of building. And I know what it requires. And I know that I cannot build that life while consistently stepping away from myself. So I made a decision that most people just won't understand. I ended the relationship. Not because she was wrong, but because I was no longer willing to abandon myself to maintain it. And maybe someday I'll learn how to do both. But I'm not willing to lie to myself while I figure it out. Understand this. Most people believe they lose themselves because of the people they're with. But that is not what actually happens. They lose themselves because of the agreements they make internally. Unspoken agreements. Agreements that sound like, if I want to keep this, I need to adjust. If I want to be loved, I need to be easier. If I want this to work, I need to give a little bit more. And each one of those sounds reasonable. But that's what makes them dangerous. Because they don't feel like betrayal. They feel like maturity. But over time, those small internal agreements accumulate. And what you're left with is a version of your life that functions, but doesn't fully belong to you. And this is not limited to just relationships. This is a pattern. It shows up in your career, where you don't say what you actually think, in your friendships, where you play a role instead of being real, in your family, where you maintain an identity that just no longer fits. So the question isn't, where am I being held back? The real question is, where am I choosing to hold myself back to maintain something? And here's why this is so difficult to break. Because the moment you stop doing it, the feedback changes. People feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel the shift. You're less agreeable, less predictable, and what used to feel easy starts to feel tense. And in that tension, you're faced with a choice. Do you return to the version of yourself that keeps everything smooth? Or do you stay aligned, even if it disrupts what you have? And most people choose smooth. Not because they're weak, but because they're attached. Attached to being liked. Attached to being understood. Attached to maintaining what already exists. But attachment is what keeps them in place. Villain's code number 1. You will be misunderstood the moment you stop performing. And most people interpret that as a consequence. It's not. It's a signal. Because the people who only accept you when you are filtered are not responding to you. They're responding to your performance. And the moment the performance stops, so does their comfort. That's not loss. That's clarity. This week's villain of the week is you. But not the version of you that people are comfortable with. The version of you that you've been managing. The version of you that calculates what to say, what to hold back, and how to be received. That version isn't false, but it isn't fully you either. And most people spend their entire lives operating from that filtered version. Not because they have to, but because they've never questioned it. So here's what I want you to do this week. Don't change everything. Don't make some dramatic shift. Just observe. Notice where you hesitate. Notice where you edit yourself. Notice where you say yes when the honest answer is no. Because awareness is where this starts. And on Tuesday, I'm going live and we're going to dig into it deeper. And I want to hear what your observations were. If this hits you, good. It means you're starting to see it. Most people spend their entire lives choosing comfort over truth. And the moment you choose truth, you will be misunderstood. And that is where this begins. This is Team Villains, truth over comfort.